That's how high achievers have that unstoppable energy, how they can access the flow state, how they can achieve sustainable peak performance when they need it, how they can tap into motivation when they need to. They don't wait for motivation to happen to them. They don't sit back and wait for the weather to change. They tap into the energy, they summon the motivation when it suits them the most. You're listening to Give Yourself Some Leeway with me, your host, Eugene Lee. Today we're talking about how to achieve peak performance and how it's not possible if you're giving your brain dirty fuel. I'm not talking about caffeine, alcohol, or whatever you feed your body. I'm speaking about motivation. Now, did you ever set your alarm early, determined to crush the day? You've got work to do, but you hit snooze, you doom scroll, and you waste the morning away. You know you should do the work. You've got that screen staring back at you, you have a deadline, but something inside resists. That's not laziness. That's extrinsic motivation burnout. You see, the science shows that there's a deep switch inside our brain, more powerful than the money you're going to make or the reward, the outcome from that deadline. It's one that makes you crave the hard work that you always avoid. And that's called the intrinsic motivation, where the challenge becomes joyful, where the grind becomes a flow. So stay with me. This changes everything. So if you find yourself hitting snooze repeatedly, or you find yourself having that existential dread in the afternoon, and in the evening, after all this procrastination, you feel like you're ending the day with a sting of, I could have achieved more today. There was so much unfulfilled potential in today that I wasted doom scrolling or on menial tasks. That's your brain trying to protect you from the struggle, the challenge. And a lot of people struggle with this type of motivation. It's like the day is your enemy, and all the challenges you had set up to conquer, you found yourself procrastinating instead. The problem is that you rely on extrinsic motivational factors. So I've broken this down to two different fuel sources. Think of the extrinsic motivation as the quick spark of motivation that people get, that people tend to lean on. Think of it as a fossil fuel. It's a box of matches that you can flick it quick, and there you have your flame. That's your fuel to get through, to get started on the task. But once you light that match, that's only going to stay lit for a short time before it burns out. And you only have so many matches in that matchbox. If you keep on lighting those matches, you're going to run out of that motivation very quickly. So these external motivation sources, they come from money, seeking status, seeking validation and praise. It's the anticipation of the reward. That's how the extrinsic motivation works. It sends a surge of dopamine to your brain, anticipating that result. But once you attain the result, that dopamine level wanes, it drops off. The sense of reward is no longer there. If you rely on that spark of motivation, it does not last long term. It's that push to get you started, but it leaves you feeling wanting and unfulfilled in the long term. Now, on the other side, intrinsic motivation has this renewable source. Let's think of intrinsic motivation like a fusion energy reactor. And while it takes longer to set up a reactor compared to lighting a matchstick, once you set this in place, it becomes a renewable source. It goes in a loop where you've got the fission and the fusion both releasing energy. So what's the source of this intrinsic motivation? There are five core drivers to intrinsic motivation, and they are curiosity, mastery, autotelicity, purpose, and autonomy. So how does this work compared to the extrinsic motivation, the matchstick approach? How does this fusion renewable motivational energy source work? It works based on the love of the activity. The sense of fulfillment is the reward. And that's a sustained release that compounds over time because you're setting yourself up for success. It's self-sustaining, it's efficient. And if you practice it long term, it's almost infinite in the energy that it gives you. We see this in projects. We'll take podcasting for an example. Only about 3% of podcasts make it past episode 20. So, what separates the people who stop after 10 episodes from the people who make it to 1,000? The people who start off are probably held back by the fear of others, fear of judgment, fear of failure. Do they get praise? They release the first two episodes and they're expecting 1 million downloads. If they're seeking that external validation and they don't see it at first, if that is what is fueling them to create the podcast, then that motivation is not going to last for long when they don't see the results they want. When they realize how much of a grind it is to get people on the show, to do the editing, to do the scheduling, all of the work, all the administration in the background. If they are fueled only by the external validation or the anticipation of the money that they will make from it, that's not going to last long term. What separates the people who last long term are the motivational factors that keep them in the game in the long run. So let's look at the five core drivers of intrinsic motivation. It's that pull energy that pulls you into the work you want to do, that gives you that sense of sustainable fulfillment. So the first core driver is curiosity, that insatiable itch to learn your craft. If you want to do something, you're going to want to learn all the ins and outs, get daily insights, all the research behind it. The second is mastery. You're going to want to improve. You'll have this hunger to endlessly improve on your skills. There's always just that edge of ability, that challenge that you want to conquer and get better on. You know that there's room for progression. And it's not that you feel you're not good enough. Feeling not good enough is extrinsic and stops people struggling to get the work done. But if you are pursuing mastery, you know that there's room for progression and you are open to learning and progressing. That's where curiosity and mastery stack. Next is autotelicity. That's love in the work itself, so that the work feels like play. Fourth pillar is purpose. That's the bigger mission beyond the reward, the outcome, the paycheck. What is the purpose behind the work that you do? And the fifth is autonomy. That's having the control over the how, when, and what of the task at hand. Knowing how can you give control of this, or how can you pass this task on to others? That you don't have to be the one in control at the wheel at all times. Is there a way for you to progress beyond that and focus your attention on other things? So this is what helps people to trigger into that flow state that we see in peak performance. So how can we apply this to our daily tasks, whether that's in the workplace, whether we are in personal development and we want to do better at the gym, or we want to get better at public speaking, whether we want to get a promotion in our careers. How can we implement this intrinsic motivation to stay there in the long term? So we look at these five core drivers. I like to look at it as you are the project manager for setting up this nuclear power plant. You want this renewable source of energy and you want to make it as safe as possible. You can't rely on someone lighting a matchstick every day to fuel your generator. That's not reliable in the long term. You're going to run out of matchsticks. You're going to have this supply of matchsticks, and once you run out, you have no one there to fuel your reactor. Too many things could go wrong. Whereas if you have the protocol to set up these five core drivers and measure the levels of those drivers every day, then you can set up this nuclear reactor to give you sustainable energy over a lifetime. So let's look at the five core drivers. How do you measure your curiosity on a day-to-day basis? We'll use a scale of 1 to 10, and none of these can be 0. Each of these five need to be at least 1. So let's start at where your lowest one is. So let's look at curiosity. How can you implement curiosity in the work that you do if it's something that's difficult to get started on? If you read or implement one work insight daily, that has an immediate impact because dopamine loop starts. For instance, if you are working on autopilot in the work you do and you don't question why you do a certain task, it's going to become unfulfilling. But if you question, is this the way I treated this task 5 years ago? Is this how this task would have been done 20 years ago? Did this task exist 20 years ago? How is this task done by others? Are there ways that it could improve? Are there things that are currently trending that might affect how I perform my task? Asking these questions and looking in on daily insights might help you to get the cogs whirring on how you could possibly improve or how interested you are in performing this task. See where your curiosity is based on a scale of 1 to 10 and how you could improve if you're scoring low. The second core driver is mastery. How could you implement mastery? Mastery, mastery involves deliberate practice on your skills. So if you feel that you could improve in a certain area, how could you hone your skills? Start with the micro wins. What's 1% that you could improve on a day-to-day basis? I love there was this example of a surgeon, and he brought in a former mentor to oversee his procedures. And he said, well, I've been doing this for 20 years, so I'm pretty confident that my mentor is not going to be able to correct me because he taught me everything I know and I've put it into practice. And he came out of the surgery and said, well, do you have any notes for me? And the mentor had about 20 pages of notes, all bullet points on how he could improve. And at first he was shocked because he said, well, I've been doing this for 20 years. What could I possibly improve on? And it was things from how intricate and precise he was with holding a scalpel and the potential for error. Only by having someone supervise or have an outside eye, an outside perspective on the tasks that we think we are proficient on, can we see where we can improve. So, if possible, have someone test your abilities. Put yourself in a space in an arena where you can test your most competent abilities and see where could you potentially improve and gain further mastery. The third pillar is autotelicity, and this is finding love in the work that you do. If a task feels too difficult to begin, lean into your natural strengths. If the struggle is too hard, where could you lean in on what you're naturally good at and find the fun, the joy in the work that you can do? The fourth pillar is purpose. If you don't have purpose in the work that you do, what is the point? How are you going to sustain that long term if you don't know the purpose. Think for a second. Every task you do, who does this serve? How does this serve? And if I did not perform this task, what would happen? What will be the outcome? Write that down. Once you put that into writing, you have a mission for the work you do, a mission for that task. You give that task a purpose and see, is that the outcome I want? Is this the reason why I am doing the work to get this outcome? Is this the purpose for the work that I do? A lot of people overlook this and they're on autopilot, working like drones and wondering why there is no outcome or outcome that serves them because they don't know or they don't reflect on the purpose of the work that they do. And the fifth core driver is the autonomy hack. When you build autonomy, you're giving the control of the outcome to someone else. Is that an option for you, and how does that make you feel? So build an exit strategy from that task. If you are struggling with it right now, is there a way that you can hand it to someone else to delegate it, or maybe automate that skill? Automate that task so that you can focus on other things that lean into your strength. Think of it as if you're able to delegate the work, you will not always be able to delegate the work fully, and not every a task will it apply to. For instance, if your task is going to the gym so that you can build a healthier body, you will not be able to automate that by delegating to another person or by putting your gym routine into ChatGPT. But you can automate it by giving yourself a routine workout plan so that you don't need to have decision fatigue on what work you do once you get to the gym. If your task is building a meal plan for the week, you can also automate that by having a strict plan that you follow and a strict system of how you prepare each meal. You can do this in your workplace also. Any administrative task, can you delegate that? Or can you automate it? Can you build an SOP and teach other people how to perform this hard work? As always, this does not happen unless you put it into practice. Common sense is not always common practice, as they say. So if you want to build a routine around intrinsic motivational factors as opposed to the push, extrinsic fossil fuel energy matchstick energy motivational factors, you put it into practice daily. You track this on a daily basis. And this will only take 2 minutes. You have your 5 core drivers on a scale of 1 to 10. See where you are at the start of the day, at the end of the day, where you are on a scale of 1 to 10 on your 5 core drivers, and how are they fueling you? Do you have the intrinsic motivation to get you through your day? So that's how high achievers have that unstoppable energy, how they can access the flow state, how they can achieve sustainable peak performance when they need it, how they can tap into motivation when they need to. They don't wait for motivation to happen to them. They don't sit back and wait for the weather to change. They tap into the energy, they summon the motivation when it suits them the most. So, how can you do this yourself? You can start with this 5-step checklist. Takes 2 minutes. You can do it at least once a day. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. And as always, if you want the show notes, send me an email with Leeway and the episode number at eugene@leeway.ie. Until next week, take care.